So it's actually very funny because as of this point, the older iPhones on iOS 17 have actually been doing a pretty decent job on this version of software. Now, it definitely has not been perfect. There's been lots of issues all over the place, but I will probably say for the vast majority of people out there, I'm actually having a decent time on iOS 17 on some of my older devices. Now, here's what I basically mean by this. On some of my phones, let's say like the iPhone 10 or an iPhone 11, these devices, even the XS and XS Max, have been doing a decent job on this version of software. I think the big thing to keep in mind here is that within your iOS 17 device, you're actually getting an iPhone that is still, not only supported with software, but it has a lot of power within it. It still has a lot of capability. And I, for one, I'm actually a really big fan of this version of software on these older iPhones. But it really isn't until you get into the iPhone 12s, the iPhone 12, 12 Pro, 12 Mini, 12 Pro Max, that we actually start seeing some really big changes. So for one, starting off, I think one of the biggest things that Apple actually ended up doing here was actually giving us the capability of having all the features for the most part within iOS 17 right there. I think it was a very cool thing that they ended up doing. And essentially, like I said, what I mean by this is with iPhones like the iPhone 12, they ended up getting almost all the features within iOS 17. So not only did they end up getting almost all the features here, but another big thing was that they actually ended up going through and essentially the stability aspect of this iPhone is still holding up very well. Like it's still a very stable iPhone. On top of that, I feel like this device is holding up very well in all the other areas when I'm comparing it kind of against it. So that's another really big thing going on for this particular phone as well. And I do think it's a very solid iPhone. Like I do think if you're going to go ahead and buy a device, this is a very solid option. But it makes me very happy because Apple could have gone through and given us like a completely watered down version of the software on this particular phone, and they didn't. So although they're no longer selling any of the iPhone 12s anymore, it still makes me feel very comfortable knowing that these types of older iPhones are still holding up very well from that specific perspective. On top of that, the stability, like I said, has been pretty decent. The performance has been pretty decent on this version of software as well, and I don't really have that much to hate on this particular iPhone. So I will say, even stepping back to an iPhone 11, all the iPhone 11s I've had for the most part, although they're not perfect and there's definitely some stability issues, they've been doing a decent job at everything I've basically been throwing at them, if you know that word, if that's worded right. And even the oldest iPhone on the iPhone 10 or XS and XS Max, these iPhones are also performing at pretty decent levels, somewhat similar stability I was getting on iOS 16 already. So what I'm trying to say is these particular iPhones are holding up very well from that specific perspective. And I do think if you're looking at it from, a stability standpoint, iOS 17 on some of these older iPhones is actually holding up quite well in my opinion. So that pretty much covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.